Okay, so I thought I would begin by just sharing a story with you about how this began. Of course, you can keep going back and back and back. But John Cobb was preaching on love of enemies, one of my favorite subjects, at a Methodist church in the village of New York City. And this was about a year and a half ago. And I attended by Zoom. And it was really wonderful. But the benediction was electrifying. And he offered this benediction. He said, I want you all to imagine President Xi and President Biden coming together to save our planet. And it was complete, you have a few moments that are electrifying in your life. That was an electrifying moment. Another one that I've experienced was when I saw Baryshnikov dancing, okay? Sometimes life stops because of the genius and the invitation of something profound. And that was that moment. So I attended, after that benediction, a chat with the minister on Zoom, and it was a small group of us. And I was so excited, I couldn't contain myself. And I said, John, you've got to make that invitation. There may be no person on the planet who can really make that invitation, because I've been to China with you. And I know you know people in high places. I had tea with you and the vice president of China. You could get a message to President Xi, and you are an American citizen. You served in World War II. You are the elder ecologic genius of our whole Protestant movement that only has Pope Francis as your equal. You need to make that invitation to President Biden and President Xi. Well, an hour later, I got an email from John, and he said, here's my letter to President Xi and President Biden, and will you help me? Well, in my world, when John Cobb asks you to help him, you sort of just get to work, okay? So I said, sure. And so the next indicated thing was, I said, let's read it at our church, which is on Zoom, which he attends, that afternoon. So we read the letter. It was completely brilliant. It's just brilliant. Of course, this is what we need to do, is bring China and the United States, the biggest populations, the biggest economies, the biggest polluters. If they came together, everyone else would follow. We read the letter, we prayed over it. And I would say, I think of the Living Earth movement as beginning in that moment. So I can be very, very hard on my betters. And so I'm kind of chastising John. I'm saying, come on, John, you're a famous guy. You know a lot of famous people. I've met some of those famous people with you, and you need to ask them for help. So he gave me, I said, well, for example, David Corton, he's a guy who started Ms. Magazine with his wife. And they must know people to, journalists and how to publicize an event or something, do a story, a journalistic story about this. Why don't we ask him? So he gave me David Corton's email. So I emailed David Corton and said, how do you do? I'm sure you don't remember me, but I met you once with John Cobb, and he has written this profoundly important letter to President Xi and President Biden. And I just intuitively know we need to get this out in the press. We need to get this. We need to get a journalist to write a story about this. This is so important. This sort of capsulizes everything that John Cobb has worked for in his almost century of service, and encapsulizes the problem and the solution. So David Corton wrote right back, and he said, oh, I wish I could help you, but I'm retired. I don't have much influence anymore about journalism and the like. And but there's someone you should talk to, John Perkins. And he gave me John Perkins' email, and I emailed John Perkins and sent him the letter, and he wrote right back, this letter is brilliant. I said, I know, you've got to help me. And I said, would you like to meet John Cobb? And he said, I'd love to. I am writing a book about China. And so we were then, the three of us, talking on Zoom a few minutes later. And that's how I began this work with John Cobb. And then we began meeting regularly. And then I was the only one in this original group that kept saying, I'm a minister. I'm a person of faith. This is a spiritual crisis we're having on our planet. I want to work with faith leaders and faith communities. And everybody else was, I want to do diplomacy. I want to teach about ecological civilization. There's many other good ideas. But I was the only one in the group that's like, this is a spiritual problem, and we got to work with faith leaders and faith communities. So I can be very tenacious. And it's because I didn't grow up in the church, I think. I'm a recent convert. So I have that kind of obnoxious zeal for religion and people of faith stepping up and doing, being a part of our prophetic tradition. So in the course of that, John began writing his Confessions, this wonderful book that really tells the truth about what he believes about what the American empire is doing, what's happening in the world, and how we would utilize the teachings of Jesus to respond. And he very graciously invited me to write a chapter on, how women might help save Christian discipleship. So in the course of that, we're having these conversations about what could we do? Could we write a curriculum, or how could we get faith communities involved in this, that, or the other? And then one day, because my husband and I have a counseling center as a part of our ministry, Church for our Common Home Counseling Center, because I'm a 12-stepper. I've been to many a 12-step meeting, which began, by the way, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson's wife, Lois, let's not forget her. People forget her. They began this genius 12-step program. And I have benefited so much from being a part of those support groups. Plus, I've started my own support groups, and they have been wildly healing and transformative and powerful for me as a person. And I've also started them in churches for different kinds of groups. And it's very simple kind of equation. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So at any rate, I said, why don't we start support groups, but let's make them like the early church. Let's invite people to always eat together, because we all know this, right? We build community when we have a meal together. If we break bread with someone, they can't really be our enemy. We are humanized when we share this bodily need of nourishing ourselves with God's gifts of creation. So John said, well, I think that's a good idea. So we invented this Earth Crisis support groups and potluck parties. Now, I tend to think that it's maybe not too late. We should change the order and call them potluck parties with support groups for the earth or something like that, because the party part is so important. The problem right now, and you all know this, is that we are in denial as a human species. And the reason denial is the first set of reactions, it is a God-given, wonderful coping mechanism. It's like going into shock when you're in an accident on the freeway. We have this wonderful ability, if things are too painful, to just act as if they're not happening. So it's a good coping mechanism. But many of us getting to the point where we realize, wow, this is so serious. We're going to help ourselves and one another wake up and tell the truth about what's happening on our planet. We are living in the sixth extinction of life on Earth. And that is such a difficult truth to be able to face. And John Cobb and I recognize nobody can do this by ourselves. Nobody can do anything difficult by themselves. Nobody ever has, and nobody ever will. Now, I am a Christian like John Cobb, but I'm a Unitarian Universalist, so I kind of can cover all my bases because I love all the religions. And God, of course, is beyond any religion, any institutional anything. And John Cobb and I both recognize I'd love to start a religious movement, but we don't have enough time. There are too many people who are just convinced there is no God, and religion is stupid, and institutional church and religions have done too much damage. So we need to work with and welcome the spiritual, but not religious, yes? And the atheists. And I'm just the person for this because I've been working as a Unitarian Universalist minister for a long time, so I know how to do that. You make everybody welcome. Okay, so these groups have begun. It's very exciting. We have been meeting for about a month and a half here in Oregon. Lucy came to the first group. Thank you so much, Lucy. And we have a wonderful new group. And we are meeting every Saturday, 4 to 6. And we are doing these 4 things. We're asking people. People are welcome if they agree. Yes, we all agree there's an earth crisis. So we're going to invite Troy from his iPhone. So that is actually a pretty small group, okay? So not everybody agrees that there is an earth crisis. Welcome, Troy. We're so happy you're with us. Welcome. I'm Bonnie, and we're delighted to have you with us. So that's one requirement of coming to the group. The second one is maybe even harder. You have to be willing to share your feelings. So you say, oh, that's easy. Well, it's not really. A lot of people have never done that in a small group before. And a lot of us did not grow up in families or in organizations where anybody asked them how they felt, or if they did, it wasn't a safe place. So these groups are created very intentionally with facilitators and with a whole team of group facilitators to help people get these started so that we have a safe place for people to share their feelings. Now, this is not rocket science. It sounds like way too hard. No, in my experience, it's not hard at all. If people are given the invitation and they intuitively know whether it's safe or not, there has to be leadership, they will follow suit. If you share deeply your feelings, suddenly, even if I have a lifetime of not sharing my feelings, I feel brave and I start sharing my feelings. Do you all know what I'm talking about? There's just like a contagion, you know? So secondly, we've agreed that there's an earth crisis. We've agreed that we're going to share deeply of our feelings. And then third, this is also really radical. We're asking people, will you please talk truthfully about what's really going on in the world? Okay, this is unbelievable to me. As a UU minister, as a Christian, as a grandmother, as somebody who went to college, how few people I know who are willing or able to talk about what's happening in the world. People just act as if everything's okay. And of course, there are many reasons for this. We live as Americans with American empire, and we are the greatest criminals as far as, with our 750 military bases and our massive military spending, all of the ways that we have contributed to the corporate takeover and the lack of democracy. Okay, on and on and on and on. People are not talking about what America's doing, and they're not talking about what America and empire is doing around the world. I don't know about you, but, I love my family, but they can't talk about it. I love my neighbors. Most of them can't talk about it. So we need to create a safe place where people are able and invited to talk about real issues that are going on the planet right now. And then number 4, this is the most important part. We all bring food and we share a meal together. This has been so much fun and been so successful. I can't even tell you. There's a woman who said in our second week, she said, we're just sitting there in the kitchen after we'd had our dinner. And she said, yes, it's working, Bonnie. Look, we all are really having a good time and feeling close to each other. And you all know that's true. This is how we create community. We just gather together. We have to do it regularly. And we eat together. And suddenly we feel like we're somehow bonded. Now, these groups are an invitation. I'll add a 5th today. For the spiritual work of radical love in relationship. I love religion and everything else, but we've gotten so off track because all the world religions agree The major spiritual practice that we've left out is human relationships and being loving in relationship. So these groups are a place where we can experiment and we can show leadership in teaching ourselves and modeling for others how to have loving relationship. So what I'm saying is we are not inviting people that all agree about everything. There's no such people anyway, but sometimes we have an illusion. Oh, I'll just invite all of my progressive liberal friends that are educated, and then we'll get together and we'll share ideas and it will just be marvelous and we'll solve the world problems. Okay, I'm not doing that anymore because I just don't experience that it's working. So we need to get some radical love in these small groups of people who are really not right bright and maybe the opposite of our political worldview and maybe really annoying because they do X, Y, Z. So we use these groups as a place to learn to love radically people who are different than we are. That's the only way we're going to survive as a planet, is if we have these kinds of small groups, because we are going to need them. Famines and war and economic collapse, these are all coming, and we have been so protected as Americans. Other people are suffering so much more, other creatures and other people in other places. And we as Americans need to show the leadership to support these kinds of groups for the people who are suffering terribly around the world. And John and I have talked about, it very well may be that these groups won't be as popular here in the United States as they are in other places, where people know they don't have any problem saying, yeah, we've got an earth crisis. That's right. And we better get together in small groups to take care of each other. So that's what these groups are for. And we have one starting in New York the first week of July. And if any of you are interested in joining one or starting one, we are delighted to help you. And maybe, Charles, if you could put in the chat, John Cobb has written this wonderful book. So the confessions and the appendix are the guidelines to Earth Crisis Support Groups. And we also are now working and almost finished with an audio version of this book. So the audio version of my chapter and the guidelines for Earth Crisis Support Group is on our Church for Our Common Home website. So you can listen to that right now. And we are already learning so much in just a month and a half. We are going to be creating even better guidelines and what have you. So how these groups work is that we gather together. Someone is the facilitator, and that can change every week. In our first group, I've been the leader every week just because we're getting out the snafus of starting something for the first time. But the idea is that we will have guidelines, just like in a 12-step meeting, where anybody can come and read the guidelines and become the facilitator. And we read the guidelines, everyone agrees, and these are simple guidelines. Everyone goes around 2 times in the group. The first time we share about 5 minutes. It depends. If you have a group of 8 people, it might be 5 minutes. If you have a group of 3 people, it might be 10 minutes. It doesn't matter. But you do the math and figure out how much sharing you have time for in your small group. And everyone is invited to go around and just share how they're feeling. And it's wonderful, because if you're like me, you don't even know how you feel. If you just have 5 minutes to explore how you're feeling, all kinds of ideas and sensations and feelings are able to be expressed. And so we learn ourselves how we're feeling if we're given the safe invitation to share. And so we all share how we're feeling, what's going on with us. So now already in our small group, okay, everybody knows that in my small group, what's going on with me, what's going on with Walt, we had, a cougar in the neighborhood or whatever, these things that are very important in our daily lives, that we have people to share with about what's going on with us and how we're feeling about everything. Then we go around a second time in the group and we invite people to share about what's happening in the world. Oh, we have these fires in Canada and people in New York can barely breathe. And there are all these people going into the emergency room. And how about my friend Nancy and Chris that live in New York and Ned? How are they doing? I've talked to them and they're saying, so I'm saying we need a place to talk about these massive crises that are going on, to say nothing of, again, a place to talk about American empire. Like, I can't believe the United States of, the country where I pay taxes is sending more money to the Ukraine for war, and there's no diplomacy that's happening. So we need a place to talk about these kinds of issues. So we have 5 minutes, and these are, we use I statements. No one is interrupted. Again, this is not rocket science for people like Walt and I who've been running groups for a long time. He comes out of the psychological model as a psychologist. I come out of the church, model, and both of us out of the 12-step model. It's not difficult to set these guidelines up to run a group that makes sense, that's safe, that's orderly. So we've gone around 2 times and we've shared how we're feeling. We've shared what's happening in the world, how we feel about it. Then we break and we go into the kitchen and we get our potluck. I can't even tell you how good the food has been. I can't even tell you, okay? It has been fantastic. And we're here exploring biodynamic farming. So we're just learning how to grow food because I'm a grandmother. I'm preparing for famines. I want a safe harbor for my grandchildren and for all of you, a place to come where we can survive together. And what a fitting name for such a place, John, the John Cobb Echo Farm. So we have our fresh lettuce and we have eggs from our chickens, and that's what we have been generally offering, and people make delicious things. And we then have an opportunity to say anything we want to say, have any kind of conversations we want. And already people are saying, this is wonderful, but I don't want to just sit and talk anymore. I want to do some stuff together. So it's an opportunity where we can organize. Maybe we want to do a march. Lucy and I, she lives in Salem and I live right outside of Salem. We live in a state capital. Maybe our group can begin planning a way that we can go in and talk to our legislators. We can do marches regularly. We can, but whatever, we might do a global program of some kind, or we may do something as simple as watching a movie like Don't Look Up, or reading a wonderful book like Confessions by John Cobb. So it might be any kind of programs might come out of that or not. Your group may need just a time to be together in community for a time. But this invitation is not just to share feelings and not to just share what's happening in the world. It is to get to work in the world. Because John Cobb and I know there is no better medicine for us in the modern world than feeling that our lives have meaning and purpose. And the most important thing that we need to remind one another, we are not going to be able to effect great change in this massive extinction, the worst that not only in our, the only one created by humans. And this is the worst thing that's ever happened on our planet. Are you ready for this? 4.5 billion years of Mother Earth's history, our human depravity of destroying the natural world is the worst event that's ever happened, okay? It's worse than a meteor coming and having a dinosaur age. We're responsible for what's happening. So nothing as bad as this has ever happened in 4.5 billion years on our common home, Mother Earth. So we need to do everything we can, not because we're going to change it, but because we don't have a choice. We have to die having tried our best to do everything we can. Not because we're going to be so tremendously effective, but what else are we going to do with our precious life? And we all can look, of course, to people like Daniel Ellsberg, God rest his soul, who died this week. A man who, how brave, risked his very life and going to jail the rest of his life to do what was right. And I heard him recently give a chilling call saying, I call all of you who work in the Pentagon to come out as whistleblowers and tell the truth about what's going on. And just, they're not that many, are there? But there are a few. And one of them is John Cobb, who, for 50 years has known how horrific the situation is and has done everything in his power with his gifts to do everything he can, not because he thinks he's going to change everything, but because that's what we have to do. Now, I've done a lot of hospice work, and being with people as they die is a very great honor. And what I have discovered is that the vast majority of people that I have been both a chaplain and a minister and a relative to at their deathbed, they didn't have very many people who were willing to talk with them about their death. And this is what we need to provide for people. We need to create places where we can talk about these things in our death-denying culture that are not talked about. And of course, we all are going to die. And it is important for us, particularly as elders, to do everything we can to have the leadership, the courage to parties for people. Okay? This is what we need. We need to have some party energy here. It doesn't matter if people are dying. Everybody knows that the next best thing is to bring some casseroles and to get together and to eat together. That's what we do when people die. And that's what we need to do as elders, as in here in the United States. Now, John and I imagine that we can have Christian groups, Buddhist groups, atheist groups, spiritual but not religious groups. We need to show leadership, and we are co-sponsoring this with the Living Earth Movement. That is not a religious organization. We are working under the umbrella of Church for a Common Home, where I'm a minister. I have a Unitarian Universalist ministry dedicated to the earth. But we've suggested that we co-sponsor this. It's coming out of our Common Home Counseling Center, because so many people see the word church and they just they tune out, okay? So this is a secular offering, but we invite people to make it as religious as you want. I want a Christian group myself, but I also want a secular group. I want to work with whomever is willing and able to do these four things: admit there's a crisis, share their feelings, share about what's really happening in the world, and be willing to go to other people's homes and cook and bring a potluck item, and are willing to eat together regularly and repeatedly. Okay, now, I am not like John Cobb. I've not written books at all. I was honored to be invited to write a chapter in the appendix to his recent book, but I wrote something in this appendix, and I just may become a writer, John, because people are doing what I suggested. And it's really kind of a cool feeling. It's like, you must have this feeling a lot. But I said in the appendix, everybody has to help do the dishes. Well, I've never written anything that was a more powerful, great thing, because, and of course, I'm terribly neurotic. So, the first time people were doing dishes in my kitchen, a very nice man and a nice woman, they were standing there having a really good time, of course, talking and doing the dishes together. I came up to them and I said, "Oh, no, you don't have to do the dishes." And this woman turned around and she said very sternly to me, "Bonnie, you said we all had to help with the cleanup and do the dishes." So at any rate, we are off to the races. We are gathering. We are telling the truth. We are sharing our feelings. We are enjoying a meal regularly. And we are so excited that Nancy is starting a group in New York. And so I just want to open it up for all of you and hear what your questions may be, and if you want to start a group, or what your thoughts and feelings are.
I can say that this idea had never occurred to me. I had spent my life talking about what I saw as the reality, and realizing that extremely few people were interested in listening. But it didn't occur to me that that meant trying to create a context of people who could listen. I think I vaguely thought Well, eventually, when these get bad enough, they'll listen. But I think that's wrong. I think as things get worse, people can't listen. And so when Bonnie suggested that we conclude the book by proposing the development of institutions which could enable people to listen, this seemed to me a brilliant idea. I picked up on it. I hope you understand it. I've had no experience with it at all. This is, for me, a new world, but one that seems to me might be the most important thing that comes out of my life's work. Again, I hope you understand, not that I'm doing it, Bonnie's doing it, but it did come out of our work together. The church has managed, and I have some ideas about that, but I won't go into, to destroy its own reputation. Some of it is because it has been truthful about itself. I don't think that there are any other professional schools in which you learn the truth about the history of that profession. And if you trace any of them, there's plenty to be repented of, but I don't think you learn that. And so I think we can be proud of the fact that we have led in self-criticism. But unfortunately, instead of being respected for being self-critical, people have listened to what we've said about the bad things we've done and just dismissed us. That is not the whole story. Please don't misunderstand me, but it's an element in the story. But the church institutions are not closely connected with the work of Jesus. There's a gap. And that doesn't mean the church, that Christians made a mistake in creating churches. But as Bonnie has pointed out, most of the early gatherings of Christians were in homes with people eating together and creating a climate in which they could talk about their lives in a way that wasn't possible anywhere else in society. And I think that's what made people believe that Jesus' message was of supreme importance. It was a new possibility for them. Life took on a different character when they could really talk about what was going on. So, for many people, the kinds of groups that Bonnie is talking about may be what takes the place of the church. We could call these churches, but there's no point in using the language that has turned people off. They are gatherings of people who are doing much what the early church did, and I think are being good disciples of Jesus. And whether you want to call it Christian or not is an entirely separate question that I don't think Jesus would care about. So to me, this is a kind of fresh thinking about what what we who are heirs of the Protestant tradition are really interested in. And I'll mention that I had an opportunity to talk with the leaders of the School of Theology about what kind of shape that school can take when it has no property. And of course, it will be a Zoom school. I think any of you who know anything about the ministry and theological education and so forth will know that half of the value of seminary are personal relationships that are developed there.
Yes.
I'm not one to dismiss the importance of what you learn at all. But you can learn it because you are together with other people who are learning at the same time. And you can have the experience of sharing. A lot of that's going to be lost when Zoom is the means of communication. And so I commented on that, and this is something that they'd already been thinking about. So it's not that what I said felt strange to them. It was just reinforcing. So I think that probably students will be organized into mutual support groups. And I made the proposal that if you think about what has been distinctive of the School of Theology, what the school is known for, and what the people it has attracted to study. And of course, this is not universally true, but that the school has always encouraged students to think about what's going on in the world and especially ever since Dean Freudenberger came. But even he wouldn't have come if we hadn't already been trying to do things. The students experienced the sense of importance of the global situation, and thought theologically about it. And so for these groups to pick up on that and be very much what Bonnie has been talking about, seems to me a very good direction and an appropriate direction, given who they are for the school that no longer has any property to adapt. And I think there will be many others. Bonnie has found that the Unitarian denomination thinks that it sees a part in moving in this direction. Mm-hmm. So it's just possible. Again, I don't make positive predictions. Too often I found things fizzle when I put hopes in them. But it might be that we are talking about this at just the time when society is ready for it. And that if they can help with what I consider the teachings, implementing the teachings of Jesus, the teachings that I care most about, that I really think are needed if the world is to survive, begin with the love of enemy. If we continue to hate and demonize our enemies, And of course, they will all hate and demonize us. I don't really think there's any hope. But if we could learn, not that we approve of everything other people do or of everything that we do, but that we would think it was important to understand why other people do what they do. That could put an end to the demonizing that our media works so hard to do. Russia, whatever Putin does and whatever she does is explained as something vicious. And to say anything good about it is kind of to be unpatriotic. If we continue in that course, we are going to destroy ourselves. I think the second thing that I think we get from Jesus that is so important is that you cannot love both God and money. And our modern world has chosen money, and we are paying the price. And it's a huge price. If the word God is too much of a turnoff, we could say, love the world, love the earth. I think our love needs to go beyond the earth, but getting to really love the earth and all life on the earth would be such an enormous advance over where we are now that I'm not going to make a big issue of whether we love God or whether we love the earth. It's loving inclusively that is important. And I think it's important to believe that within the universe as a whole, there is much that we can rely on. The universe science has discovered that the universe is fine-tuned for life. Okay. Now, I don't think mechanisms fine-tune themselves for life. That's just doesn't seem like the normal. If something is fine-tuned for life, that is something that wants life. And I think God is really implied. But of course, many people think things about God that are not implied. But I think that God loves living things and loves the living earth, and that we can participate in things that are going on throughout the universe and make our contribution. And I think the word love is not too strong. We can participate in a cosmic love that needs our participation in order to be effective. I think that if we really could get people to think open-mindedly and not just jump in with their prejudices so quickly, that we could have the good news that there is a spiritual power in the world that's trying to help us. I think that is good news because we certainly don't find much hope when we just observe what our nations are doing. So to me, this idea of just having groups that have no theological assumptions, I mean, some may, but others don't. There's no distinction made in that. but create a context in which people can open-mindedly think about things and not just reflect the prejudices of our universities. Our universities are committed to atheism, and that is the main reason why we have an atheist culture now. But the evidence is going the other way. And I think it would be wonderful if we could have free, genuinely free discussion of these matters. But I've also realized that the only way that a book like mine will be read is if people have some other place of getting security, being able to read it. So there's a vague connection to the book, but I'm mainly saying the book is one thing, but it may be that something more important is beginning. And I'm very grateful to Bonnie for having proposed it and let me have that hope.
John, thank you. As always, you gift us with profound profundity of so many kinds. So we are forever grateful for you and all that you have gifted us and taught us. And I'm just reminded that the good news of the early church made people very happy. So I think this is the invitation. Amidst horror in the world, we can indeed be joyful. And that is a tremendous paradox. But for those of us who have had a very low bottom, as we say in 12-step programs in our lives, we know that it's true. We can indeed be very joyful in times of great hardship. So that is the invitation to be together in celebration. So thank you.
How closely do you want these groups to continue to be in relationship with you all? You know, it's a great idea, and some maybe will just take off with it, and others will want guidance or support. But I don't know if that's okay. You know, I mean, when you bring it up to people, as I plan to do in Unitarian circles, do you want them to stay connected with you? You know, talk with you in the beginning so that connection begins there. It's just a puzzle to me organizationally how this proceeds.
What an excellent question, Lucy. And of course, we're inventing this as we go along. But my thoughts are when we said that is that we would encourage people, if they want to be solo, to recreate this however they would like for their own purposes. And having said that, I know there's great advantage if you are beginning a program like this to have the support of guidelines, facilitators, and most importantly, Lucy, a network to begin a Living Earth movement. There's enormous power in that. So we would, you know, if people really wanted to be rugged individualists and take their cowboy group somewhere else, they would have our blessing. But we really envision this as a potential network. And it's very similar to the early church. You know, these early churches, they began all over the Mediterranean, and they didn't know one another, many of them, but they all began teaching this radical teaching, which John is suggesting we do, and we are now using more psychological and secular language, where we radically love one another in small groups. We eat together and we share honestly, and we talk about not the Roman Empire, the American Empire, and the sixth extinction of life on Earth. So we really would envision this as a movement and want to stay connected, for I think we can help one another. We have this beautiful image and vision of the Living Earth movement. You know, we're coming out of Church for a Common Home. You know, this is a UU ministry that has the vision of caring for the earth. So we'd like to stay close to help each other. and to create. We have so much more potential if we can stay in a network to do global actions, to do national actions, to do state actions. So I hope we can stay close. And having said that, I think that there is, as Rupert Sheldrake talks about, there's a morphic field here that's at work. And that is that these kinds of groups are beginning with different kinds of names and different kind of focus all over the place. People have begun to send me, I'm getting emails, oh, there's a group like what you're doing here. So we hope on our website that we can share different kinds of groups that are busting out all over. And but I really hope that we can stay in community together.
My suggestion, you may have done this already, but I've missed it, and that is to write down what you've just said, so that it's part of the instructions, not necessarily guidance.
Yes.
Or invitation, I guess. Otherwise, others will have the same question I did.
Well, thank you so much. And we will be on our website. We will have more current. The guidelines have been already rewritten, and we are going to be rewriting them specifically for the New York group that's starting in the first week of July. But then we will have updates. And again, this is very similar to 12-step programs in that there are groups, for example, who decided they didn't want to use masculine words for God in their 12-step program. So so I think it will be natural for us to continuously rewriting the guidelines.
And which website are you using for this?
That's a really good question. Right now, we're in conversation of we are probably, this is going to be under the website of Our Common Home Counseling Center, which is, actually, it's an old website that we're going to reactivate. However, right now it's on Church for Our Common Home, and it may be that it needs its own Earth Crisis Support Group website. But again, there's several things because we've just begun. Maybe we should name it the Potluck Party Earth Crisis Support Group. No?
Well, depends what's primary and what's secondary, I guess.
But anyway, we stay tuned, and all ideas are welcome and needed. We're just figuring all this out.
Most gracious God, Spirit of love, you who empower us as well as call us. We need you as we have never needed you before. Help us to make ourselves open to the love that you have bestowed upon your world. Give us the strength to be open to truth and the wisdom to understand it. We thank you. We love you. We hope. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, John. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Luke, and Anand. Thank you, everyone.